Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. I am Brian here with Andre and Randy. What's up, guys?
Hey, good morning. Happy Tuesday.
I know, right? Happy Tuesday. Happy trouble finding topics for this show because of, world events that are occurring right now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So guys, let's get into it. So I got a couple questions for you. What if your firewall, the thing that you bought to protect your network, becomes the attacker's blueprint, right? That's one thing we're going to talk about today on the show. And what if a medical manufacturer doesn't lose its factory? It loses its ability to print shipping labels. What kind of impact does that have? We're going to get into that one today. And what if a cancer research center ends up notifying over 1 million people because it kept social security numbers from the 90s? We're going to talk about that today. So this week isn't about phishing emails. It's about control plane failures, operational choke points, and the long tail of data you forgot you still had. So we're going to jump right into it. This is Security Squawk, where we translate cybersecurity chaos into executive level consequences. No scare tactics on this show, no vendor spin, just what actually matters to business leaders. And we just talk about it and rap about it and share our thoughts from a cyber experts who see this stuff every day. So 3 stories this week, one theme: the systems you trust most are the ones quietly expanding your risk. We're going to dive in here with Andre's topic, which is that firewall topic, Marquis Software versus SonicWall. Andre, it's a lawsuit that's going to make a lot of security vendors uncomfortable. Fill us in. Let's go.
Yeah. So you start off the show saying what if, but all this stuff actually happened, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to talk about Marquis Software Solutions, and I'm going to paint the picture for you. So they're what is called a fintech company, and they provide marketing, data analytics, compliance reporting, and customer engagement tools, primarily to banks, credit union, and mortgage lenders. So they sit pretty much between the banks and a lot of data. They hold names, socials, financial account information, contact details, and they have about 700 customers. So what actually now happened is they, in their corporate office, they use SonicWall firewall, great company. And they have MFA enabled, they had all of the security controls in place. And a lot of times when you have all of these settings in the firewall, you want to make sure that those settings are backed up. And SonicWall provides a third party. SonicWall is the third party, but they will back up everything of those settings. So if a firewall or something like that goes down, all you have to do is put the new piece, restore back from the backup, and everything is good. And unfortunately, SonicWall, that was holding the backups, that got compromised. And after that got compromised, the bad guys, they were now able to use that information to get into Marquis system. And once they got into the Marquis system, they were then able to deploy ransomware, and it actually impacted 74 banks. So here you are, you're the customer, you did everything right. And now you have 74 of your clients that now are impacted by this. And you have out of those 74, you have about 36 of them already suing you. So now Marquis is suing SonicWall for this big mess up. So even if they did everything right, we're seeing through the supply chain that we're in this situation that we're in now.
Thoughts, Randy? You're not going to say anything?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to pick the right thoughts to bring out. So we have seen over the past few years, we've seen SonicWall in the news quite a bit. I don't really want to go into the details. I don't know if I even want to share my own opinion here, Brian, because of what is it, liability or whatever. But we've seen SonicWall come up multiple times. And I think that looking at this case, looking at this article, I think that Marquis got a really good chance of winning this lawsuit. We covered this this breach obviously from a different angle. It was one of our stories a few months ago, probably whenever it happened. But I think they've got a pretty good chance. They got a pretty good case here. So. What are your thoughts, Brian?
You're muted.
Oh, he's muted. That means you got to talk.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just busy back here doing the show. So this isn't someone forgot to turn off MFA, right?
Right.
No, not at all.
Right. So, you do everything right internally, still get bypassed because your security vendor leaked your playbook, right? And that happens all the time. Like, guys, I remember going through an audit, right, here at Exact, and we questioned the auditing because, like, we're turning over network diagrams, how we do everything. And I'm like, what are you doing with this stuff? And where are you keeping it? Where are you storing it? And what happens after the audit? And it's like, we were the first person to ask these questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't like make me feel great. You know what I mean? So, like, it's a similar thing here. You got to always keep your head up. You got to be looking over your shoulder. Like, where's your data going? Who has it? And then what are they doing with it? Right. And like, the good thing is at the end of the audit, we had the ability to destroy the evidence that we had to supply, to the auditors. That was the good thing. Right. But, there were some questions about, security in the process of handling that as well that we were concerned with. But at the end of the day, that's all I really cared about. Like, once we give you all the data, if I'm in control of deleting it and it really gets deleted, then I guess I'm good with that, right? So, but these are things you got to think about. So, third-party risk moved from questionnaires, right, to litigation in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So now things are going to come in to play here. And like, you could apply this to, like, think about your cybersecurity. If you have cybersecurity insurance, right? Did you fill out that form correctly? And then they're going to start looking around, like, who was involved? Did somebody install that firewall, a third party, right? And then they'll go after them too, right? So expect insurers to drive that conversation hard when something like this happens.
Yep.
If your firewall backups contain reusable authentication artifacts, that's not a misconfiguration. That's architectural negligence by the people in charge of your IT and cybersecurity, and you're going to get nailed for it.
Yeah.
So,
and one more thing too is originally SonicWall took 3 weeks to disclose it and said it was only 5% of their clients, and later on they said it was all of their clients. So this is going to be a huge lawsuit from
100%. Yeah, Anthony Webb, good comment there. Have well-defined SLAs. Insurance will look there first. That, absolutely right. You got to maintain what you say you're doing for people and things when you're either supporting these things or you put them in place, right? So,
well, I would even add a little bit to that. Not only do you want to have it well documented what you do, also document what you don't do, because if let's say if you're an MSP in this case and you're not doing X, Y, and Z, the insurance company doesn't care because they're just going to assume that you're covering it all. So you want to document what you're not doing as well. So it's a big conversation we have with our clients, and it's really about, there is risk. How much do you want to mitigate it? How much do you want to eat? So.
Yep. Hey, and just, when all these tools have the ability to do things like export configuration things and stuff like that. Like sometimes you got to go deep enough to look at what's inside those, right? Because if it's passwords and stuff, you got that sitting in a backup, you got that sitting in a documentation tool, and that gets compromised, and you're in the same boat, right? So, good topic, good discussion. One of those things that is left field for a lot of people, and I think I applaud Andre for kind of highlighting this and bringing this to the show today. So, Randy, over to you. We got this UFP Technology cyber attack. Medical device manufacturer UFP Technologies. What happened?
All right. Well, so this is interesting, and I think it really dovetails into our previous topic in a way, because we're always talking in our show about third-party risk, supply chain risk, and things like that. In this particular case, this medical device maker, they're called UFP Technologies, and they make little parts of medical devices that are then used by big companies to go ahead and to make devices that are used. Talking things like, I don't know exactly, but talking things like reusable things like scalpels, packaging that is, that doesn't have germs in it. This company has around 40 clean labs around the world. So they are a $600 million-ish a year company. And in the supply chain, they're manufacturing parts that then are later put together to make devices that we use. A lot of these devices are things that aren't kept in large supply. So a disruption at UFP can disrupt the manufacturing of some critical medical devices, which can affect then ultimately trying to get medical care. So bottom line is they had a breach, data was lost, and they ended up, I believe it was something as simple as a little QR code or something like that basically held up their process during all of this, and it ends up causing like a shake in the supply chain, if you will, and that's basically the gist of this.
I mean, how can you be that big of a company and not have a system where if this system goes down, if our label making system goes down, billing system, we just stop operations? Like that shouldn't be an answer.
It shouldn't be a what?
Uh-oh.
Do we lose?
No, I'm saying it shouldn't be an answer. That shouldn't be the solution. Like if we talk about tabletop exercises and things like that. If you're not able to, if your bread and butter is shipping out equipment and you don't have a plan when the system goes down to ship out equipment, why you got to have something.
Right. And the crazy thing, so something like that disrupted everything. They had to file an SEC form on this. It also looks like data was not only taken, but that data was destroyed. We don't see that very often. So interesting case.
Yeah, it definitely is. You have, cyber criminals, right? I look at it like this, where they have figured out the leverage points in certain businesses. And this is one of them. Like, they didn't have to attack the whole business. They just needed to shut down this piece of it, and it killed them, right? So, ransomware groups are getting better. They're getting smarter. They don't encrypt everything anymore because it takes them a lot of time. So they're looking for choke points like this. So if you have them, they're going to exploit them. And where I push back is where UFP says they don't expect material impact. And to me, that's just accounting and CYA language. Customers don't care about material. They care about whether their shipments are late. And their shipments are going to be late. Mm-hmm. So any other thoughts here, guys?
None on my side.
Yep. So this is a massive reputational problem for them. I think, financially, the insurance companies will come in and help them out. But when delivery slips, that's gonna be in the customer's memory, and they're gonna find other people and other ways to get what they need. So, and it works like that 100% of the time. And we try to warn people on this show that this will play out this way, but you read articles like this where they seem to be numb to that fact. And that's where we're at here. So, all right, guys, moving on here. We have University of Hawaii is the one I wanted to bring to the table. And they had a little bit of a ransomware issue that was discovered in August of 2025 in the epidemiology division, and systems were encrypted and data was likely exfiltrated. There was approximately 87,000 study participants whose information was directly impacted. But the bigger problem here is the historical data sets that they found in this heist, which was social security numbers and driver's license numbers and voter records dating back to 1998 that pushed potential exposure to nearly 1.2 million individuals. So what happened here, guys, is they engaged the threat actors and obtained a decryptor, and they received assurances that data was destroyed. So let me reiterate that, right? They paid, they got a key, and they got a promise, right? What I want people to understand in this world is that is not anything. That is not verification. That is a negotiation, and that's all it is. So what are your thoughts here, guys, based on that? The data still got out, even though this organization paid. This is where we're at. And then, like, do you have any heebie-jeebies? Randy, is the hair standing up on the back of your neck yet? I mean, come on.
I mean, I'm shaking my head over here, about to pull a muscle in my neck, because this goes back so far. Like 1993 is when this study was established, that gathered this information. It's at a university in Hawaii, but it contains driving records, driver's license numbers, social security numbers. Like, I mean, okay. So first off,
Bro, I'm going to tell you right now, like back in the day, Randy,
what's that?
Back in the day, we had a similar client over at UPenn. I'm going to tell you that their security was nil.
Right.
And, they do things like this, right? They do, they do research and they bring people in. And when they do that, they take your license. They take, I don't know why they have voting records. I guess maybe if you don't have a license, you're bringing in, very odd to me, but whatever. But again, this wasn't an EMR. This wasn't a clinical thing. This was a research infrastructure. It was basically a server, right? In a lab at a university, probably in a basement somewhere. No kidding. I'm not kidding. Typically less governed, less monitored, holding extremely sensitive data, and that data retention and the ability, and like Andre, you call this out all the time on the show. You talk about like not cleaning up your data, having data for 20 years, right? That is a massive risk when you're retaining data for that long. So the fallout here, guys, with this university, you can't notify 1.2 million people without some kind of reputational fallout. And that's just going to be what happens here. So any last thoughts before we kind of go in the tail end of the show here, boys?
I know for the last couple of years, we always see universities in the news because they are to a sense, they're not regulated. Right. They're usually underfunded in cybersecurity. And most importantly, they're running some type of legacy system. Something is still just like hospitals, something is still working and still on and still connected to the internet because they need that one thing. but there's still no. I'm sure no one has looked at that data from 1998 in many years.
Yep, 100%. So,
well, you
good
know
thought.
what? Well,
Go ahead.
Brian, I was just going to add with, with AI and all of that, we ought to be able to audit our data and find something out there that we might have overlooked using an AI agent, go through the data and, get rid of old data. And we're also seeing laws like the FTC safeguards rule, which is a rule based on a law, but it requires car dealerships and other people that aren't banks but deal with money things in money-like ways to not keep data past a certain time unless they literally need it to continue doing business with the customer. And the reason that we've seen all these laws and rules pop up is because of cases like this. And I would like, before we wrap up the show, we ought to look at, there was a comment I'd like to address.
Yep. So we got, I'm going to bring up Anthony. I thought that was a good comment. So supply chain attacks are going to be more common with vibe coding, flooding to GitHub. Oh, definitely. I mean, all this AI stuff is going to cause major problems, very soon.
Yeah, I mean, if SonicWall, with the billions that they have in their programmers and stuff like that, made that mistake, just imagine this vibe coding.
Right. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about an incident, and kind of the tagline on that was, your breach is not a broken trust anymore. It's a result of a scan that an AI did and figured out that you were exposed onto the internet or something like that. So yeah, you're right on there, Anthony.
Yeah, and I appreciate the comments and engagements, folks. Keep bringing them in. And we got one over here from YouTube, just tuned in. Had an incident in our university as well. And yes, most universities are not well regulated in terms of operations, even in Europe where everything is regulated. Yeah, we got some clients over in Europe. We know it well. And the other side of it is the unis are just, the universities in the US are not regulated either. They fall, a lot of these, just so you're aware, fall under Health and Human Services. That's how they get their money. And there's not a lot of regulation there when it comes to the data security and stuff like that. So,
yep. There's not a lot of regulation in general because I can't speak for everywhere in the world, but in Texas, a public university is basically an arm of the Texas government. Mm-hmm. And so where I live in a college town where there's a university, and laws that apply to the regular folk don't apply to the university because they're literally government, is the way that they're, that it's looked at. So yeah. And there's not a ton of regulations aimed back at the government. I know there's plenty, but there's not like this flood of regulations regarding data that are aimed back at the government. So,
or responsibility. I mean, like this article should have also said, and because of this, John Doe, who's been holding the data for 20 years, has gotten suspended, or something. Like there's not going to be any accountability. They're just going to throw money at it. Everybody's going to forget in a couple of weeks, and then we're talking about the next breach.
Mm-hmm. And then Anthony mentioned the vibe coding thing, flooding the GitHub, but also just because of AI in general, we know that tons of data is getting fed up to AI and not being kept separate, right? You got to be diligent as a user of AI to figure out how do you keep your data separate. And if not, yes, AI is going to try to make it anonymous if you upload it to like a free AI or whatever, but you still run the risk. If it's very unique data, you run the risk of it remembering it word for word. So you got to be very careful in your use of AI while you're doing it. So.
Yep, definitely. So guys, I want to wrap up the show here. Maybe if we can help translate some of this for our audience, which, we know are CEOs, IT people, IT directors and MSPs, right? So let's start with the CEOs. If you guys have anything you want to share, but one thing that, I thought about today based on what we talked about is, for Andre's article or for Andre's topic, security stack can fail through the vendor layer, right? And you have to understand that as a CEO. You can do business with a vendor, and we've talked about this before. You can do business with a vendor and they could become a problem for you, and you can get hacked through something that they might not be doing well enough. And that's what we learned here with Andre's topic. So did you guys think of anything else that CEOs might gain from that? Go ahead. You're muted.
Uh-oh.
You're good. Okay. All right. So, and then, the other thing is we talked about operations being crippled without shutting down production, and, archived data, old data being tomorrow's headlines. So, those are big things that CEOs have to be aware of at that level, right? And so for IT people, review, like we mentioned, review what your firewalls are actually doing. Like when you take those backups, if, most of the firewalls that I've dealt with, you can schedule these backups to happen. And some of them allow you to push them off to the cloud and stuff like that. So like, you have to know what that contains. You can't just blindly send that off somewhere and be like, it's just our backups over there. It's off site. It's great. Yeah, well, if that gets hacked one day, just like any backup that goes off site, anything that you push off site, you have to know what's in it, because that now becomes part of your risk chain. And you have to be aware of that. And that's where I think that's the biggest or the weakest link I see is right there, guys. Right there is like, the CEOs trust the IT people. The IT people don't do this stuff. And they're like, yeah, we're good. We got our backups off site. And then that's where the false sense of security comes into play. And that's what the hackers exploit. Right. So, make sure you're auditing your backup access controls, like I talked about. Like, what are you doing with my data once you have it? Right. And then operational choke points, billing, label, scheduling. Figure out how easy they can go down, and then test your recovery. Can you get them back up quickly? Right. Because if you can, then your risk just went down tremendously. So, you got to assume attackers understand your process and those dependencies, right? What systems rely on what? And you have to think like they do. Think like a hacker at the end of the day, right? And I guess, for my manage and my MSP friends out there, you got to understand this. If you manage firewalls, if you back up things for clients, if you deploy MFA, you are now in the liability chain if something happens with that client. So make sure your contracts are tight, and you also pay attention to the architecture, like I mentioned with the IT people, because both matter. So any other thoughts there, guys, based on what I talked about there? Or?
Yeah, not to beat the dead horse on the vibe coding, right?
Yeah.
I just did a Google search and it said 30 to 50% of new code is being vibe coded by non-programmers. And how I illustrate that with technology is when you have, the Best Buy selling the routers or something, and someone like, an owner or somebody saying, oh, I'll just buy this off the shelf and install the router myself, or I'll just take these computers and install it myself, not thinking that they know what they're doing, and to only find out later on that, like, yeah, that thing's sitting there, you didn't do the proper updates or something. So when they're doing all of this coding but not understanding the why and the language behind it, and then they now leave a big vulnerability open. So
All right, guys, good job. 3 different industries, same underlying issue. Number one, right? You have to think about controlling your trust, right? Just because you do business with Microsoft and Google doesn't mean you shouldn't be investigating or checking out how they do things, because it isn't their fault if something goes bad. It's going to be yours. Read the terms of service with those big companies, right? There you go. Anthony just said it, right? I'm going to pull it up because he literally just took my thought and put it. And company's huge doesn't mean it's secure. I'm constantly fixing billion-dollar company garbage. We all are, dude. So we feel your pain. So, so be aware of that. Don't just trust them because they have a big name or whatever, right? You have to investigate this stuff and make sure you know your risk all around. Be aware of your operational choke points, because cyber criminals are, and make sure you're going through your data. And if you don't need it, get rid of it. Like seriously, like, especially if it's sensitive data, get rid of it. Right. and have a data retention policy in place. Like right there is another thing I can tell you by just reading the article is that university lacked a data retention policy, right? And if they had one and somebody brought it to their attention, like, hey, we need to have one of these, maybe they wouldn't have found themselves in the position that they're in today. So just remember, if your vendor backups leak, your controls evaporate. If your shipping systems stall, your leverage disappears. If your archives hold decades of identity data, your exposure compounds. Cybersecurity isn't just defensive anymore. It's architectural accountability. So until next week, when we bring you our next live show, make sure you're thinking about things like auditing your backups, questioning your vendors, and stop keeping data you don't need. So we'll see you next time on Security Squawk, same time, same place. For Randy, Andre, and I, stay safe out there and take care.